everybody, and welcome to Project HR, a podcast dedicated to building better workplaces. Project HR is brought to you by IRI Consultants. IRI empowers leaders to prevent and solve mission-critical workforce issues through holistic and sustainable strategies. For more information, you can visit IRI at iriconsultants.com. I am Jennifer Oraquad, Director of Business Development for IRI, and your host for this episode of Project HR. Today, we're delivering another installment in the Project HR Best Practices series, in which we'll talk directly with practitioners in the industry. In our most recent Project HR episode, we were able to explore the intersection of manufacturing, safety, and HR. So in this episode, we're continuing our look into manufacturing by talking about best practices in positive employee relations. But don't assume that if you're in retail or agriculture or any other industry, there isn't something to be learned here. With broader insight into best practices, you may find innovative thinking that wouldn't have otherwise come your way. So to help us all understand the specific hurdles that human resources and employee relations teams face in the manufacturing industry today, I'm talking with Barrie Green, Vice President and CHRO for Hopkins Manufacturing. Barrie, you've certainly tackled this question a time or two, so thanks so much for joining me today on Project HR.
I am honored to be here and glad to have been asked to speak today.
Yeah, so Barrie, let's talk a little bit about the human resources and employee relations challenges that are currently impacting manufacturing. What are we looking at in 2023 and beyond?
I think one of the things we're looking at is this whole workforce stabilization. So, one thing COVID has taught us is the insource versus outsource in manufacturing, and where some of our products and some of our manufacturers were outsourcing product lines. And then COVID taught us the lesson of versatility in our manufacturing and where we are manufacturing and bringing product back in to our facilities in North America. It's that stabilizing your workforce. So bringing people back into the facility that you may not have had in the facility. As we also hear about this whole great resignation, this willingness to leave an employer, that volatility that we're having with our workforce is just crucial now more than ever. So getting that stabilized in our workforce and planning, as well as is just I think one of the biggest challenges we've seen in this outcome, and something not a precedent that has been set prior to COVID and we're experiencing now. And I think it's going to be a challenge for us to get a stable workforce in our facilities now and in the future.
So what makes manufacturing different? We talk a lot about, the return to work and everything that happened, with the pandemic, but so that's a clear differentiator there with manufacturing, that those people probably didn't necessarily go home. So what makes manufacturing different from other industries, specifically around employee relations?
I think one of the things that differentiates manufacturing from other industries is the complexity and the multiple types of industries that we have. So there's plastics and chemical and metal and food manufacturing. And so as some of these facilities ended up reducing some of their workloads, not manufacturing as much during COVID, it could have, if you were in the food industry and restaurants were not serving or closing, that impacted it. So you lose some of this talent, and some of it is very specialized. I've been fortunate enough to work in food manufacturing in my career, and never thought I'd have to recruit a food scientist. But food scientists exist; they're out
Mm-hmm.
there. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you then release some of this talent that's out there, it's trying to get them back. Where in the other industries, and a nurse is able to go to different facilities and different practices and hospitals and private, you just have a lot more consistency in your workforce and your labor pool. We just have so many niche industries in manufacturing, and I'm in plastics, and I've spent a lot of times in plastics manufacturing, and people don't grow up to be plastic injection mold technicians or understand thermodynamics of plastics, and
Right.
and so trying to find that talent to get it back into your industries. I think that what makes that different with manufacturing is the complexity of some of these different industries, whether chemical or metal or plastic or food. And then once that talent leaves your facility, it's hard to get it back in, and it's hard to recruit it back in. And that causes that kind of separation between manufacturing and the variety of manufacturing as opposed to some of the other industries like hospitality or retail or education.
So in your view, why is intentionality around positive employee relations so important?
Positive employee relations is crucial and foundational. The bulk of a manufacturing workforce is going to be direct and indirect labor. Most of the times it's 65, 70% of your workload. And so, creating positive employee relationship is a sense of ownership. Ownership by default then creates a sense of accountability, not just for yourself, but for the people around you, which then helps impact your productivity, your safety in the facility, right? You want to keep yourself safe, you want to keep your peers safe, your sense of worth and impact to that organization. So that positive employee relations is just foundational to the backbone of manufacturing and keeping everybody engaged.
Interesting. Would you say, though, that it's more important in a manufacturing environment?
So I'm not going to say it's more important in manufacturing. I think positive employee relations is important in any industry that you're in.
Hmm.
Keeping your people engaged, keeping them informed, communicated, keeping them as part of understanding their impact to the overall organization is crucial in any industry that you're in. In manufacturing, again, we have that uniqueness with the bulk of our workforce is going to be direct and indirect labor.
Hmm.
And so, with that, you have some nuances that come into play with it. So, I think it's a different challenge when it comes to positive employee relations, but it's important in any industry that you're in and in any field that you're in is keeping your people engaged, keeping them on top of things, and having that sense of ownership.
Yeah, for sure. So, for people that are entering the industry right now, what is the perception of manufacturing today?
I think we still have some of the 1940s, 1950s mentality is people go into manufacturing because you didn't get a degree, right? That it's
Mm.
unskilled labor, that it's physical and manual work, and this is where you go if you don't have anything else to do in life, you go into
Hmm.
manufacturing. And I think it's can be further from the truth. I started in manufacturing 20 some years ago and fell in love with it
Hmm.
in the processes of how things are made and how it's created. And there's such versatility with manufacturing in quality and skilled trades and inventory control and material handling and supervision and marketing and sales. So there's a lot of different avenues and paths that you can take with it. So how do we break down those stereotypes of this isn't a place you go just because you don't want to go to college or you don't want to get a
Hmm.
degree? Some of our positions require degrees or education beyond high school, and that's why we use educational reimbursement to help people pursue those and grow within it. So we got to break away from that, 1940s, 1950s mentality of it's
Hmm.
it's just kind of going in and making the donuts every day because there's a lot more that happens, right? Especially when you're supporting other industries or other businesses that depend on the products that you produce.
Hmm. Well, and I don't want to perpetuate any stereotypes here, but would you say, on the whole, that manufacturing workers are more familiar with unions, more comfortable with the concept of unionization, given the history of the industry?
I would have, if you'd asked me that question 10 years ago, I probably would have said a little bit more yes. But we have seen a change in, union mentality and the drives over the last couple of decades. I don't think people are as familiar with unions as they used to be. A lot of the generations that were very heavy union have retired from organizations, and private industry union membership has dropped. I want to say the
Hmm.
last numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts it about 6%.
Hmm.
And then it's also regional. You tend to see a lot more union activity in some states as opposed to others, and some industries. What is on the precipice now is these recent activities with companies that are a little bit more mainstream, more public, such as Amazon and Starbucks, and union organizers are recruiting, a different generation
Hmm.
of people with different skill sets, more social media, more out there, and using Instagram and using Twitter. So it's becoming a little bit more quote unquote mainstream that it has in the past, where it was more generational knowledge. My grandfather was in the union, my dad was in the union, my
Hmm.
mom, and it just became more tribal knowledge. And now it's becoming a little bit more mainstream knowledge. It's out there and you see it. It's on social media, and union organizers and unions are recruiting people who have that knack to connect with these other generations. So, staying on top of positive employee relations and engaging with your people become the number one defense of an organization.
All right, Barry, I'm going to take a quick sponsorship break right now, but when we return, I want to talk about how manufacturers can improve their delivery of positive employee relations. Stay with us.
In today's ever-evolving political and economic climate, The relationship you have with your employees is critical to the success of your business, but it is also the most vulnerable. At IRI Consultants, we understand the pressures your labor and employee relations teams are under, from changes at the NLRB to immigration issues to controversial Supreme Court decisions. The IRI team brings 40-plus years of expertise. Our team includes published authors, CEOs, human resources and communications professionals, former labor and employee relations executives, public relations experts, investigative journalists, and even award-winning podcasters. The IRI team will work with you every step of the way so that you can focus on running your business while we handle your trickiest labor and employee relations challenges. Get started today at iriconsultants.com.
I'm back now with Barrie Green, Vice President and CHRO for Hopkins Manufacturing. So, Barrie, let's talk about how a manufacturer can build and support positive employee relations at their company. What are the key components?
Number one key component is communication. I don't think I could say it enough. I think you see surveys after surveys, the articles about it out there in the mainstream. SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Management, will have stuff out there. Communication needs to be open and responsive. Listening is key. You can ask people their opinion, you can ask them their ideas and suggestions, but if we don't respond, if we don't provide feedback, then it's those ideas are just dead. They lay there, and people will then say, "Don't ask me again because you didn't react or do anything on the last one that we did." So, communication, transparency of an organization, how we're doing when things are going well, when things are not going well. So, people want to know. People want to be informed. I mean, this is the age and generation of information. It's out there. It's public, and people want to know that. That way, they can adjust and ensure that they're still engaged. So, communication, I would say, number one. Over multiple forms, multiple medias. You can never over communicate. You can never offer too many opportunities for the people on your team to provide input, insight, suggestions, things like that. Um, I believe then the mutual respect is also key in positive employee relations. And you need to make sure that it is across the board and it has become second nature in your industry and with your people, that it's mutual respect.
Mm.
Regardless of level of position, regardless of role, everybody plays an important part in that facility. And having that mutual respect is key. All the frontline leaders, all the executives, everybody on board has to ensure they engage, and it's embedded in your culture to have it. I would put third, training and development. So, a lot of people are wanting to, not just to be in the same role for 20 years, and they
Mhm.
want to move and they want to grow. And so, I get a lot of questions from candidates is, what are the growth opportunities? Is there educational reimbursement? Can I move into another role? How are internal promotions? And so people are more savvy about growing within an organization and what skills and what capabilities can you teach them. And so having a good training and development program, even your strong and steady people who like what they're doing and they enjoy it, is there development in place opportunities for them. So training and development, I would put there as well. And then a safe work environment. And anybody who's in manufacturing is probably going to say, Barrie, you should have put that number one, right? Safety is always number one and
Mhm.
should have been your first thing. But I think it ties it all together. So having a safe work environment, who doesn't want that?
Mhm.
You want to go into a workplace where you're taken care of, where the equipment is properly maintained, guarding is in place, proper PPE and safety equipment is there for you to use, and you don't think something's going to fall on you when you're out
Mhm.
there on the plant floor. You're not going to trip on cords. So a safe work environment is just crucial to any place you work at. Nobody wants to be in the basement with the red stapler, right? You want
Right.
to you want to be in an environment that is safe. So I would probably put those as those top four environments. And of course, with everything, there's all these sub action items and tasks
Mhm.
and initiatives that can roll up into that. But
Mhm.
when we talk about positive employee relations, and if you look at articles about unionizations and why people are unionizing, comp is not always the number one reason.
Right.
There's
Right.
all these other things and these dynamics that come into play about perception of being treated fair,
Hmm.
the perception of consistency with company policies and rules, and so there's these all these other aspects of that employee experience that dive into that. And if you're doing those things, if you're addressing those items, then you're creating that positive employee relation environment,
Hmm.
and people won't need or feel like they need to seek assistance elsewhere.
So, and we talk about the fact that policies don't make people safer necessarily. They don't necessarily make one person respect another. But is it important for all companies to have a positive employee relations policy in place?
Yeah, and I would say not as much as a policy, but a strategy. So have the initiatives and the strategies, and the policies are good to have, and procedures are good to have. But ensuring that there's a strategy or guidelines that you're going to use when you're looking at positive employee relations, and that creates this alignment and consistency. And that's one of the things, especially when you're in manufacturing. Sometimes you will have a single site location, you'll have multiple locations. So how do you keep your multiple locations or different
Hmm.
departments consistent and aligned? And that's when you have the strategy or the policy or procedure there. And then you talk about, okay, what are those items, the top items that you're going to work on, or those initiatives in regards to this. So I know I'll tell people I have 1,000 things to work on.
Hmm.
You got to pick those top 3 to 5 and say, these are the ones we want to execute. We're going to execute to excellence, and we're going to sustain them. And that is more crucial and value added than trying to solve 30 problems and you don't sustain them, or you don't get them finished at all. And then it doesn't make any impact at all. So having that policy or that guideline, people want to know the rules of the games, right? I would love to play Monopoly and buy how many houses I want to buy, and not pay rent if I don't want to pay rent on
Right.
that. So there's those guidelines and those policies and structure in place to help provide that, and that creates that consistency, which, as I talked about, that perception of fairness and that inconsistency where people may say, oh, well, this person's your favorite, or you let this person do that or not.
Hmm.
When you have those in place, that just really creates that sustainment and consistency that then creates alignment.
Well, and going back to the first element, of the key components that you talked about of communication, when should this policy or the strategy really initially be shared with employees? How often should we discuss these things internally?
I think if you're putting one together, then when you roll it out, right? Everybody needs
Hmm.
to be online and be on board with it and get that buy-in. So initially, when you roll it out, and then as frequently as is needed for your environment or your culture. So it could be monthly, it could be quarterly. As your cultures evolve and as your programs evolve and sustain, then you'll change the timing based on the your employees feedback, um, the reception, is it value added, and so you'll adjust the timeline based on some of those other factors. So it could start out, hey, we're going to roll this out, and every month we're going to talk about it, or every quarter, or this is going to be a biannual thing. So every company has their own subculture, every industry has a subculture,
Hmm.
and if you have multiple facilities, all your facilities have their own little cultures that that
Hmm.
happen.
Yeah.
So creating that consistency with it, but then being sensitive to, as well as not trying to force an issue, because I think we've all tried to put that square peg into a round hole, and it could create frustration, and it can create disengagement if you try to force an issue too much. So going back to that communication and listening, right? So you start out with it, and then as you test the waters, be open to the versatility of flexing that or adjusting it based on the receptiveness of the audience, the feedback that you're getting from the team as well.
And let's talk for a minute about the third component that you discussed, which was training and development. Why is it so important to positive employee relations for employers to invest in employee growth?
It's a very competitive market nowadays. I don't think that is a shock. I think,
Hmm.
everybody is talking about that competitiveness, and And there's multiple manufacturing facilities out there, and there's Fortune 500s, there are mid cap, there's small manufacturing, and not everybody can compete on the same field in regards to comp or benefits. So, what are those other things that you can do in that employee experience and those positive employee relations that can help give you that edge? And training and development is another key component, right? So sometimes people don't want to be on the line for 20 years, right? Maybe they
Mm.
want to be a lead or move to inventory control or to a quality department or safety or something else. So, how do we provide that opportunity? I believe too, people get frustrated when they don't understand their current role and responsibilities or what's expected of them. So, having a good onboarding program in place, looking at cross functionality, so training people to do more than just one position. So, when you do have attendance issues or call offs, you're not stuck. What do I do today because somebody called out and they were the only person who knew how to cycle count. But if you do cross training, then you can call that person up and say, "Hey, we're going to move you over to cycle counting for the day
Mm.
to cover this attendance, issue, or somebody calling off or they're on vacation." So that versatility and people wanting to do more, and I think there's that desire out there as people want to do more than just the one thing, and they understand the worth that provides to them to be able to be multifunctional and do more things. And as a company for us, growing that talent internally and having people wanted to do more engages them. It creates that retention
Mhm.
model as well. So when you're investing in your people, they're going to invest in you, and you can retain them. Which saves a lot of time when it comes to recruiting jobs. So if I don't have to recruit a person, it is much more value added for me
Mm.
to retain that talent and grow it within the organization.
For sure. And within the training and development, is there value in educating the workforce about unions and maintaining that direct relationship? And obviously there's a component of retention there as well. What are your thoughts there?
I believe that if you're doing the right things, then you shouldn't need to have that discussion
Hmm.
regarding unions with your workforce. If you feel you are at risk, or if there's just too many things to work on, um, there's the two school of thoughts, right? If nobody knows about it, then you don't talk about it. Nobody knows about it, but if you talk about it, now somebody knows about it.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
so there's ways to ensure that if you're doing the right things, if you're um, creating the positive employee relations environments, there shouldn't be a need to have those discussions.
Mhm. Sure. So, Barry, what are the most common employee relations mistakes that you see manufacturers make?
I think most of the common mistakes I see is not understanding and appreciating everybody's roles. So I always tell, as I recruit candidates, and they'll ask me, what do you expect out of the first 30 days or 60 or 90? My first things are seek to understand. So
Mhm.
understand. Our people understand the roles that they're doing. Understand your product. Understand what is happening. I have been very fortunate in my career in a handful of my manufacturing facilities that I was able to work the floor when I've had employees complain about glazing a window and the wrist motion. And then I went out there and spent 4 hours glazing windows in a window manufacturer. I'm like, my gosh, you are right. this it hurts my
Sure.
wrist. So what can we do? So seek to understand and appreciate and the role of frontline leaders and the impact they have to the teams out on the floor. That frontline leader is your bridge between our hourly direct and indirect labor and the leadership team. So the directors and so on. That frontline leader is that connection point. As executives, we don't get on the floor as much as we'd like to. Even as directors, you don't get out on the floor as you'd like to. Your frontline leaders are out there in the trenches every day, as well as our employees out there. So appreciating and understanding those roles and then the impact they have overall within the organization. Not taking the time to understand that, I think, is a mistake. And as HR, we can do what we do in any industry, in any field. So very fortunate for that. But every industry, even in manufacturing, the difference between plastics manufacturing from metal, from food, from chemical, understand what your people are doing, what the processes are, what the procedures, what's the manufacturing, the raw materials coming in, how it's made, and spend time with your team. So I think that's a very common mistake, because I could sit in my office all day long and think I have all the answers. Um, but I probably don't, right?
Mhm.
They're theoretical if I don't engage with my leadership team, if I don't understand the business, and if I don't understand our manufacturing process, then I'm trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. I've got to understand that. So I think that's the number one mistake we make, is we don't take the time to understand and appreciate our manufacturing processes or the business that you're in.
Yeah, that's brilliant. All right, Barry, it's time for another quick break. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to the Project HR podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Orqua, and my guest today is Barrie Green, Vice President and CHRO for Hopkins Manufacturing Corporation. We're back. So, Barry, tell us a little bit about your company, Hopkins Manufacturing, and how you've promoted positive employee relations there.
We are aftermarket automotive accessories with a global platform. So I have manufacturing in Canada, Mexico, two facilities here in the US, and a distribution center in the US. So trying to get alignment and consistency across those locations can sometimes be a challenge. And one of the things we started was one-on-one stay interactions. And what started this was I had a HR leader come to me, and they said an employee was leaving after being with the company for 6 years. And when I asked, well, why are they leaving? Well, they haven't been happy for 2 years, and they're upset with something that was said, and they don't feel they have a good relationship with their supervisor. And I'm like, well, how are we just now hearing about this?
Mm,
If this person has had these issues for a while, and we're finding out on the day that they turned in their notice. So I've challenged my HR team to have one-on-one stay interactions. So it was their 2022 metric and objective, that they engage with 100% of the employees in their facility, and they asked the basic three questions. What do you like about working here? What are the good things that we are doing? What are the things that you wake up and you're glad to come in every day? What are the things you don't like? What are your frustration points? What are those things that you don't like about the environment, or policies or procedures or whatever? So what's not working? And what ideas or suggestions do you have? And so every HR leader is doing those one-on-one interactions, and we get a lot of great information. And it gives people an avenue. It gives people that one-on-one time to talk about, concerns or issues or items that they have. And so we've done stay interactions. Um, we also started microtransactions, and this is where every month each location does a microtransaction. And it can be something small or silly or simple, but it is something that we're going to celebrate, and we're going to hand out something to each employee, and it's engaging supervisors to have that micro touch point. And so a couple examples are, I think it was Tootsie Roll Day, and they bought Tootsie Pops, and said, we're excited to roll with you. And so it's that micro transaction touch point with each employee that they go out and they hand stuff thing. But it's simple, it is quick, and it creates that little micro transaction, that spark of
mm,
engagement with people on the floor, and it continues to just build that relationship. We've been updating and revising our recognition program. And so, recognition, I think, is always high on the list of how do we show people we appreciate what they do every day? How do we separate the effort from actual results? And how do we recognize them? So we are overhauling and reviewing our recognition program. The other thing we are working on is a no points attendance policy. So as I look at our attendance policy in manufacturing, you tend to have point system that's very punitive. But life happens. It happens for salaried employees. It happens for hourly employees. And so, how can we create an environment that we are holding people accountable to attendance and showing up to work when they need to be here, but giving us flexibility when life happens? We can be empathetic and understanding about life happening. Right?
mhm.
There's a fire at the house, or flood, or something happens. And so, how do we create that flexibility to allow life to happen? So we are working on a no points attendance policy that will give our leaders the ability to have some flexibility, but at the same time, We all have in manufacturing those habitual offenders that
Mhm.
are just going to be tardy all the time or absent all the time or no call no show, and so there's still structure in place, and we can still hold habitual offenders accountable,
Mhm.
and address those items, but not have it in such a point system where it tends to be perceived more as punitive
Mhm.
as actually addressing attendance. And then we've also been flexible in our scheduling of our hours in our operation facilities. So, manufacturing tends to, again, be here's your schedules Monday through Friday. First shift is 7 to 3, second shift 3 to 7. So, we're very structured in those work hours, and we hire people who can work all 8 hours, 40 hours a week.
Mhm.
And we started last year opening it up to part time. Well, I'd rather have a great person here 2 or 3 days a week that I know the 2 or 3 days they're going to be here, and production can schedule around it, and they're productive, they're dependable, they're reliable.
Mhm.
Why wouldn't I offer that type of flexibility? So we've gotten some great reception, and we've gotten, most importantly, some great people working on our team. And the other thing that we have worked on is unpaid leave of absences for cultural events. So, we have a diverse workforce population, and sometimes we have employees who may need to leave for 4 weeks or so during certain periods of the year for culture. And before we wouldn't allow them to happen, they'd have to quit, and then come back and reapply. And so I'm like, why not allow it? It's unpaid leave of absence, so
Mhm.
it doesn't cost me anything. They're not asking for paid time off. But if they give us those times and we approve it, the supervisor then again knows that person's not going to be here. We can schedule around it, and I know we've got this person coming back. When they come back, they know they have a job they're going to come back to.
Mhm.
We know we have a dependable, reliable, trained person that's going to come back and do the work. So we've made some of these changes, and we've gotten some great feedback. I'm just been very fortunate that operations and leadership is supportive of these crazy ideas and
Mhm.
and thoughts. But it's really worked out for us. And so, how do we continue to be forward thinking? How do we continue to um, not be so stuck in some historical ways of how we've done things, and
Mhm.
let's kind of open that up a little bit more. So those are some things that we've worked on here at Hopkins, and we're going to continue to do. And I've challenged my team to continue to come up with other ideas and suggestions. So how do we continue to go down that path of engagement, culture, and positive employee relations?
Mhm. Well, and a lot of the things that you mentioned there, including flexible scheduling, less punitive attendance policy, the option for unpaid leave, those appeal to younger workers. And of course, we're seeing a generational shift within the workforce right now. So, how critical is it to positive employee relations to be able to implement these things?
It is crucial because you're right. There's a multi generations in manufacturing facility, but we are seeing the retirements, and these
Hmm.
people are taking 20, 25 years of knowledge with them. And so we've got to have that contingency, and retention is now crucial as we have this workforce coming into play that tends to be younger generations. And
Hmm.
so sometimes, they're a little bit more quick and prone to leave a company and move to another organization. So that positive employee relations and those things that you do helps to create that engagement. And I was excited when we did these day interactions, and consistently across the board, one of the number one responses that we got about what do you like about working here is the people. And I was like happy that people genuinely like the people they work with,
Hmm.
and the people in their work teams and the work groups. And that can't be said enough, is right. You want to like the people, and you want to
Hmm.
be in a work environment. So as we're bringing in these new generations with different mindsets and different thoughts, how do we plan these contingency of this tribal knowledge leaving our facilities? And that goes back to, again, training and development, and starting to download all this tribal knowledge that may be leaving your facility, and engaging these newer generations that are coming into the workforce.
Hmm. Well, and we talked about the importance of improving the misconceptions of unskilled labor and things like that around manufacturing. Can positive employee relations move the needle in that effort?
I believe it can. I think we need to get away from, like you said, this stereotype of manufacturing is where you go if you have nowhere else to go. There is a exciting there's just so many exciting organizations, and I've been lucky to be in different companies, and I've been fortunate to work in some Fortune 500s and see some great best practices, and that has helped develop my philosophy with HR. And as I've said, I've worked in union and non-union, and that has helped my experience in positive employee relations. And I think as people are engaging the workforce and as people are coming into it, culture is just crucial. And the environment people are working at, that positive employee relations becomes key. Sometimes you can't always out compete on compensation, like I said, and benefits, but what else can I provide as an employer for that whole experience for you? This is where you want to come in and do the things that you enjoy doing with the people you enjoy doing. And I've told my team as a goal for HR is I want people to be here because they choose to be here, not because they feel they have to be here. So I want you to choose coming here every day because you like coming here and you enjoy what you're doing and you feel appreciated for what you do.
So if we want to find out more about you or about Hopkins Manufacturing Corporation, where can we go?
You can find me on my LinkedIn account, my email, or hopkinsmfg.com.
Excellent. And all of that information will be included in this week's episode companion guide, which you can grab for free at iriconsultants.com/podcast. Right now, though, Barrie, it is time for our lightning round questions. These are questions I ask of every guest of the podcast. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
All right. Question one is always a topic showdown. In this episode, we've been talking about the importance of positive employer relations in manufacturing. In your opinion, which of these endlessly positive songs about optimism is better? I Got a Feeling by the Black Eyed Peas or Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves?
I Got a Feeling.
Okay, I agree with that one. That one will pump you up, right? Next question. What is the best book you've read recently?
So the best book recently would be Critical Thinking in a Nutshell. And I liked it so much. I got a copy for each of my HR team members, and we did a book club on it and read it. So it was by ThinkNetic, and it was great, very insightful, quick read, and very value added to the team.
Nice, clearly, because you shared it with everyone. All right, next question. What is your favorite thing about the work that you do?
Every day is a new challenge. So, as human resources, I think we can all relate. We see the best in people, and sometimes we see the worst in people. We wear multiple hats. So it's never boring. It's always a challenge, and it's always an opportunity for us to be a better us and to help other people be a better them.
Very nice. All right, next question. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I would say the best piece of advice I was ever given was from my father. He was an immigrant from Mexico and worked here in the U.S., and he was in maintenance at a manufacturing facility. And one of the things that he told me is that no matter what role a person is doing, everybody matters. Doesn't matter if it's a janitor, a maintenance person, a production operator, HR, accounting, everybody has a role within the organization and everybody matters.
That. All right, so last question. Who or what inspires you?
Over my career, I've been inspired by multiple HR leaders that I've worked for. Most recently, the CHRO with Overhead Door was just the most inspiring. And the reason is he gave me that opportunity to grow. He believed in me. He respected and listened to my opinion. He also provided me feedback. We're none of us are perfect. I think that's the one promise I make my HR team is I don't know everything and I'm not perfect. And he was very good at providing me feedback to help grow. And he kept me challenged, and he challenged me to be better. And that inspires me every day I am in HR. I want to be the kind of leader that inspires other leaders and the kind of leader I would want to work for. So I am very, very grateful for him and the guidance and tutelage he gave me while I was with Overhead Door.
Sounds like the kind of leader we all want to work for. Thanks so much for joining me today on this week's episode of Project HR, Barrie.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm honored to have been a guest.
I also want to thank those listening in. Here's a final reminder to unlock your access to this episode's companion guide at iriconsultants.com/podcast. If you're ready for your Project HR debut, our team is always looking for outstanding guests. Let us know about your expertise by emailing us at projecthr@iriconsultants.com. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to Project HR. A new episode posts every other Thursday. Finally, drop me a line, leave us a review, or give the show a handful of stars wherever you get your content. That's all for this episode of Project HR. Let's make it a great day at work.